Right. Yeah. And it goes nowhere here. But yeah, is that what it was? Yeah, well, if you got them all waxed up, then you're okay. You know, it's the Proverbs for me is probably by far one of the best or easiest ones for me to always go back to. But, you know, I don't know, if you grew up in my era, you know, I'm 61, and so certain cartoons are still funny to me. But what I've learned over the years is those same cartoons didn't have just one meaning. Some of them were pretty risque, and some of them had political statements built into them that I had no idea about. Well, a lot of times the Proverbs, it's not that they're risque by any chance, but there's a lot of meanings that we need to absorb, and I'm hoping that you're figuring out some ways that you can begin to study a little deeper as you read these, or if one of these verses happens to arrest your attention. All right, let's jump right in at verse 16. And again, none of these really just kind of go hand in hand with each other, but in the long run, they will kind of come back together. It says, take his garment that is surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. Now, the idea here goes back, and we'll look at some verses a little bit later that talks about this last part of that. Take a pledge of him for a strange woman. We'll talk about that in a moment. But in this passage, it says, take his garment that is a surety for a stranger. What does that mean, a surety? The surety there, what does it mean? Collateral. So are we talking about then financial dealings primarily then in this area? Probably. Does the Bible forbid us to be a cosigner for loans? Yes or no? Huh? No. Be cautious, but not be a... So it doesn't forbid it, but there are people that will co-sign for a lot of things. There are a lot of people that put their money out there, and sometimes you can help somebody and it doesn't quite help, and you get taken for a lot of money and stuff like that. Now, if we were to be blessed with finances, should we ever dabble in making high interest loans in order to make money? You wouldn't. Are we forbidden from the Bible of doing that? Any input, Greg? Right. Theoretically, why do we have high interest loans? Why are they out there? Because they're high risk. And I don't think there was ever a forbidding of even making a high interest loan. It's when you begin to get it to where you take so much advantage from it. But notice let me just go through my notes here. So what's this verse saying about loaning money or giving financial credit to somebody? What's it kind of saying to you in this? And I think we've already hit upon most of it. Is it take his garment that is a surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman? That could even be considered a third-party lender at some point even. Basically, a man by the name of Thomas Constable said this: Solomon advised that a person who takes on the obligations of another person who is a stranger or a foreigner to him is not very wise. Such a stranger is a bad risk. Well, that's what you got to put in your mind. I don't know this person. And of course in those days they did not have the ability to do credit checks or look at your past financial histories like we do today. Basically it was, do you trust her? And he's saying, just be careful. And he's saying not only to be careful, but be there. Now, go back or go over Proverbs 27, verse 13. Proverbs 27. Did I say 20? 27, 13. Notice it's basically word for word. Take his garment that is surety for a stranger, and take a pledge of him for a strange woman. Same exact verse. So again, a repeat. Now, the idea here is if you lend to him, make sure that you have some sort of collateral. All right, and again, take his garment. Why wouldn't God say, put your house up for collateral? Why is the garment specific in this case? Why do you think God would say, take his garment? That's right. It's one thing that's sure. People are going to want to have a garment on. So what I'll do is you'll put that up for collateral. You don't pay, I'm going to take the shirt off your back. And so it's kind of one of those situations that it's just telling you, make sure you get something of value. It's not so much the shirt or the pants or the skirt or the robe or whatever it might have been in that day. It's more of what's near and dear to that person. What is the idea here? And you do this, such as a garment or some other pledge. I put this out. And in Bible days, in the Old Testament in particular, when two men wanted to do business, they would go into the gate of the city, and in the gate of the... We got somebody walking? Okay. It's okay. I thought we might have her guy back. I wish he'd just weed every once in a while would be okay. So basically, just make sure you take a pledge, and they would go into the city gate is what I was going to say, and there were items that they had to put out publicly, and then the elders that sat as judges in the gate had to certify those things. And so if there ever was a question, then they could go back to the elders of the city of that place, and they could say, do you remember Joe Schmo over here promised me this, and he's not paid me for this amount of time. I want to collect my collateral. I want what it's worth so that I might enjoy or sell it and get the benefit of it. We also see in the Old Testament that if a person couldn't pay, what were some of the possibilities? Servitude. Children to be the servitude. So there was a lot of emphasis put on what's your pledge. I'll pledge you, if I don't pay, this may be good as you buy your house, I'll just let the kids work it off. Bingo. No. And they'll say, yeah, right. All right. This proverb is designed to encourage us to hold people to their obligations. Do you agree with that or not? Is it important for us as Christians to hold people to their obligations to us? Sure. Now, how we do it, that's where the fine line comes in. It's okay if somebody obligates you. For instance, I'll tell you a little bit about a situation of a certain educational institution that was promised a large endowment. And after the person passed, the family said, no way, Jose. And they actually took them to court. By the way, they lost it. They didn't get it. But they were going to make the obligation stick. I don't have any problems with that. It was promised in writing. It was there before everyone, and it didn't happen. Obviously, it could be argued, did they waste their time? No, they probably didn't. It was a principle of the thing. William McDonald said, be sure he puts up plenty of collateral so that you'll be protected in case he reneges or goes bankrupt. And again, we're talking about high interest loans. We're talking about things that making sure, now this isn't just, I need enough for this. It's probably somebody that's got he's exhausted all other forms. All right, hold your place there in Proverbs. Go back to Genesis chapter 38. And we'll kind of look at a story here where a pledge was given, and then that pledge was used to bring conviction. Go with me to Genesis chapter 38, and let's start at verse 13. Genesis chapter 38, we'll start at verse 13. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. Now let me give you the background here. Tamar had married into her father-in-law's family. Her husband died, and by the law, then the next child would have had to marry her. The brother would have had to marry her and raise seed up under his name. Well, there was a difference in age, and this widow waited and waited and waited, but her father-in-law would not give the young man to raise up seed. And so Tamar, this woman, she's told that your father-in-law, he's going up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments off from her. She took off the widow's garments. I don't know exactly what that is, but a lot of times in past days when a widow was there, a lot of times they wore dark clothing. Maybe you remember your grandparents. It was very important. No one, nowadays you go to a funeral, you can see every kind of clothing known to man, and you wonder about it. But back in the day, no self-respecting person would ever go to a viewing or to a funeral without wearing black. That was just par. And so there had to be some garment that people would instantly recognize they must be a widow. They must be, and probably some plain outfit that probably didn't have any. When Becky and I lived in Kentucky, we made some friends with some Amish folks, and every spring the young girls would wear different varying colors of these just one-colored dresses that they homemade. And we asked about it one time and found out that certain colors meant this one's 2 years away from being eligible, that one's 1 year, and this color, they're up. If you want them, just make a deal with the local genealogist and everything would be fine. And so there were different garments for it. So she put off her widow's garment there in verse 14 from off her and covered her with a veil and wrapped herself and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Selah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. There it is. There's this brother of her dead husband, and he's now grown, and he should be doing his duty. Now, verse 15 says, when Judah saw her, that's her father-in-law, when Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, because she had covered her face. See, everybody's known by what they wear. Of course, these days you're not for certain anyways. And he turned unto her by the way and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? Basically, they were making the deal. All right, so she wants a pledge. And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet and thy bracelets and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. So now she's pregnant by her own father-in-law. It's kind of a mixed up kind of thing. And she arose and went away and laid by her veil from her and put on the garments of her widowhood. So she went back to what she had been doing. The only difference is now she's pregnant, okay? And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend, the Adulamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. That would have been the bracelets, the staff, the signet, and the other things that he had already given her. They had brought the little kid there, the little goat, and they'd exchanged it, and everything would have been above board. And so it says, and he sent pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not. And he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. Verse 23, and Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. Basically, he said, it's all on her head now thinking that she was still the harlot. Now notice this in verse 24. And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, bring her forth and let her be burnt. Pretty rough judgment here, isn't it? Verse 25, and she was brought forth. She sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, am I with child. And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet and bracelets and staff. Now notice what it says in verse 26. And Judah acknowledged them and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Selah, my son, and he knew her again no more. Okay, you see, he got caught. But the idea here is that the pledge was very, very important. It was the legalities of it all. You can't just loan somebody $20 and expect them to get it back. She knew she had the collateral, and she could make him own up to it. And so the idea is, if you're going to make a loan, you need to do everything that the law would allow you to do then to have that collateral. It's not against the rules. It's not even against the rules to make some money, but don't become oppressive with it. And it is probably a fine line. And nobody likes to talk about finances. Nobody really wants to get too deeply into, you don't need to know my business. I don't need to know yours and stuff like that. All right, look at verse number 17 in Proverbs chapter 20. He says, the Holy Spirit says, bread of deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel. What do you think the word or the phrase bread of deceit is? What's that in reference to? Anybody? Bread of deceit. Anybody got a note in their Bible? Does yours say anything different? Okay, stolen bread. That's different. Okay. Tom, you got anything on your study Bible? Man. Oh, man. He brought a different one tonight. Shame on you, Tom. The phrase bread of deceit means any form of wealth gained dishonestly. You buy into that? It's any form of wealth. Now, most of the time when we think about wealth, we're talking about the bottom dollar. What's it all equal out to? What's the bottom dollar? But there's other ways of being wealthy, isn't there? But if you do it by deceit, now, why would making money deceitfully be sweet? It says, bread of deceit is sweet to a man. Why does it seem to be sweet if it's made dishonestly? Say again? It's easier, but what else? Okay, huh? Yeah, if there's 5 here, next time I can get 10. Sure, it's easy money. And if it was easy to deceive this time, it might be even easier to deceive again. Okay, so I believe it's sweet to man because we've gotten over. I got one up on you. I took you for something, You're supposed to get $2 and change, and then when you get out of the car, you find out they gave you a $1 bill and a $10 bill. Do I keep it or do I take it back in? See, these are the kind of things. What's meant by the phrase, his mouth shall be filled with gravel. Not gravy, but gravel. What's that mean? Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's always going to come back and bite you, right? What was once good now becomes, Becky and I, we do a lot of chicken, and a lot of times we'll put it in the pressure pot. And man, have you ever been eating like one of the best tasting chickens you ever had and run across the bone? Isn't that disappointing? You thought you had them all, and it does happen from time to time, but multiply that. Man, I'm eating this good life. I'm getting over on everybody. I've cheated them. I'm making a living at this. I'm doing good at it. And then all of a sudden, it's all turned to gravel. Not very pleasant, not very helpful. Barnes tells us a little bit about the phraseology here. He says, to eat gravel was a Hebrew saying and is an Arabic phrase for getting into trouble. That's a pretty good statement about it. So it was kind of a colloquialism, if you will, about, go ahead, cheat your way through this. You're going to get caught someday. And when you get caught, it'll be rough. I mean, think about some of the famous people of our time frame that swindled people out of millions of dollars. And of course, they got caught and put in jail, and some of them died in jail, and some of them committed suicide, right? I mean, they just, you hear it all the time. Maybe there's even local people that you know that cheated people for a long time and then got caught, and it wasn't good. And so this verse does come true. In the book of Lamentations, let me read you one verse. Lamentations chapter 3 and verse 16. It says, he hath also broken my teeth with gravel stones. He hath covered me with ashes. Again, this is the, Lamentations here is crying a cry, if you will, to those that have cheated. And it says, you've broken my teeth with gravel. Of course, if you don't have good teeth, your health ain't good. Right? I mean, there's studies out. Keep your teeth healthy. Your health will be improved by it. If your teeth are no good, you swap them out and they become like stars. They come out at night. Amen? And at least you can chew your way through something. My dad always said that he used to tell my mother, your eyes are like pools, cesspools. And your teeth are like stars. They come out at night. Maybe that's why they divorced. I don't know. Go back to the verse again. Look at it, and it says, "Bread of deceit is sweet to man, but afterwards his mouth shall be filled with gravel." How do we apply this to our life? Make an application. Tell me how you would apply it. Be honest with people, and you don't have to worry about eating rocks. I ain't gonna eat no dirt. Anybody else want to try? Yeah. Sure. Right. And the sin is not just the deceitfulness of finances here. Like he said, any sin for that matter. If we willingly know that this is against what God would have for me, and we do it, we're looking for a sure punishment to come our way. It may not happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen. Someone has rightly said this: you can choose to sin. You just can't choose your consequences. Even for saved, that's true. We can choose to go against what God has said, but we don't get to choose the punishment that comes because of it. We can pray for mercy, we can pray for grace, we can ask forgiveness. It's still probably going to be more than we really want to pay. Would this verse apply to cheating on our tax return? Thank you. Why wouldn't it? That's the best question of the night. Why wouldn't it? We talked about getting too much change. Is it right to keep it or not? Well, their loss, my gain. Is that right? No. What are some other areas that we could possibly get wealth in a deceitful way that's maybe we haven't touched on? Anybody got an example of some deceitful ways of gaining wealth? A scammer, sure, knowing that it's wrong. Just 3 easy payments, and if you call in the next 10 minutes, I'll, whatever, sure. All right, look at verse 18. Proverbs 20, verse 18. Every purpose is established by counsel, and with good advice make war. That's an interesting verse. What's the Holy Spirit, the master teacher, trying to teach us with this? Okay. So what's that saying to us then? Before you make war. Or a deadly mistake. I think she was headed down that road. She's really there. Okay. What's implied by the phrase every purpose? I'll give you an easier one. What's the word all mean? Sure. What's all mean? All. Wow, rocket science right here in the auditorium tonight. So all counsel, all purpose. What's the purpose? What do you think a purpose is? What is the Holy Spirit? He chose this word purpose. What is the purpose? What's it speaking of? Anything that you do, right? We should be careful in anything we do. To make it sappy, if you want, we could go back to a few years ago and we could always ask the question, what would Jesus do? It's good in principle. It's hard to practice, isn't it, sometimes? Oh, yes. The word purpose, bear with me here. It means to have advice and to take advice. Does that make sense? To have people that can advise me and then to take it. That at first didn't make a lot of sense to me. But God places in our path people who can help us in for whatever it might be. Joel is trying to fix his truck. I hope he's listening tonight. I'm probably not going to call Joel for help on repairing my car. I'd probably call Dave. You know what I mean? Not that Joel's not capable, but Dave will, I can call Dave and say, Dave, my car just went chunk bump. Oh, that's this. Just go over there and get the part and bring it over and I'll put it on. The rest of us would have to turn it upside down 3 ways to Sunday and try to figure out what it was. So not only do I need to have people that can give me advice, but do we ever skip taking the advice? Yes or no? Sure, because it's probably not what we really want to hear. Yeah. The word purpose means to have a prudent way or take prudent action. So the idea here is this. Whatever I'm purposing to do, I want to make sure that whatever I do is prudent. That means it's ready to do, it's going to be to my benefit, it's not going to be cheating, there's nothing against the Bible against it, and it's needful and it works for me, and whatever way it takes, that's the way we should go. The word purpose also carries with it to be able to consult someone. It's almost like where it says every purpose is established. The word purpose there means before you do something, you need to consult with some folks to make sure you're at least thinking it through right. It means to guide somebody. No, you might need someone to guide you, and yet, bottom line, you've got to make the decision. Then it says, kind of as a tag-on thought, and with good advice, make war. All right, somebody make an application. Good advice, with good advice, make war. Make the application for me. How do you apply this? Okay, you have to know, you have to trust your advisors. And what was it Grandma used to say? Misery loves birds of a feather. Isn't that funny how that when somebody's going through a situation in their life, it seems like all their friends are going through the same situation. They may not be the best ones to get advice from at that moment. You might want to talk to somebody that's either been through it or has some experience with it, more so than those that are actually walking the same walk, because then you got jaded views, obviously. Why is it so important to choose wisely when it says, with good advice make war? Why is it important to have good advice before you make war? Okay, you know the enemy. What else? Oh, you pick and choose your fights. Not only do you know who your enemy is, you know his capabilities, you know your weaknesses, and you can weigh these out. I put it like this. You almost have to ask the question. I don't care what the purpose is, whether it's I got to have my way in this argument or whatever. Your purpose has to be, do I really want to go down this road? Is this the hill I'm willing to die on? And what I mean by that is, if I move forward to this, am I willing to stand even if it costs me? And then you have to ask the question, what will this war cost me? Yes, ma'am. I foresee, and I'm not a prophet, and I know we've got veterans of the Afghanistan war. I see a large population suddenly cannot deal with what's happened, and there will be more and more requests for help, and rightfully so. I think it's going to floodgate, because I thought this was the hill I wanted to die on, or I was willing to die on, and now I've been betrayed. That's a natural thing too. In a marriage, is this something I'm willing to destroy my marriage over if it comes to it? You have to ask questions like this. And so it's kind of that way. By the way, here's what the word war literally means from the Strong's Concordance. Any battle. Do you battle every day? Yes or no? I'm not talking about husband and wife here, okay? I do counseling on Thursday evenings, like midnight or something. Yeah, just text me. Do we fight battles every day? We fight health battles. We fight, do I want to do this battles. If you're on a diet, you fight eating a Big Mac. I mean, there's battles out there, right? And so any battle, it means fighting. Sometimes when people make war, and you almost see this in the Mideast, where it seems like the quote warlords, the only reason they want to fight is so that they might destroy others, which in turn destroys them. Does that make sense? Think about anywhere. I'm going to fight this out, and in the wake of that fight, it destroys others, and then after that, it's a hollow victory, it starts destroying you. So he's basically saying, better have some wise counsel on, is this worth going to the next level with? I wrote this, fighting that devours us, so that we get this idea that we have to win this one no matter what. One of the things the Bible has talked about is that no man sets out to build a building without counting the cost. No man goes to war without counting the cost. What's it going to cost me? I can be right. I can have all of my facts and figures exactly right. And I can argue it till I'm blue in the face and get nasty and vitriol about it. At what cost? Will it cost my relationship with my wife? Will it cost a relationship with my children? Will it cost a relationship with my work, with my church, with my best friends? That's the whole point. Is this war worth it? And I have to make a decision. Now, there might be an occasion where it comes down to, and we've been talking about this in various classes, where our government's doing some wacky, weirdo things. When is it we stand? I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I don't look into the magic ball, but I do know this. Before I make a decision to move forward, I need to make sure I've counted the cost totally. Of course, sometimes the cost gets counted before you're ready to do the math. You know, think about the Christians in Afghanistan that are being slaughtered. They probably didn't have a time frame for that, but they knew it was coming. Kind of interesting. At what cost? Basically, this verse tells me, before I go off to do battle, I better count the cost. Yes, I might be right, but what will it cost in the long term? By the way, I've been on sides that I decided it wasn't worth the cost, and it went ahead and went away. And there's been times I decided this is worth the fight, and it didn't turn out so good. It cost more than I thought it would. You have to ask the question, can I win this battle? And if you do, then you have to say, what will it cost? Will this battle that I'm in, will it destroy needlessly? What does the military call it when, I can't remember the term, when a civilian would get, a national would get shot? Collateral damage. What's the collateral damage of this war? And by the way, there are a lot of times it's not just death. A lot of times it's other things. So it's kind of interesting to think about. The other question you'd ask is, what am I willing to lose if I go to take this to the war level? Kind of interesting. All right, let's go on to verse 19. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 19. He that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore meddleth not with him that flattereth with his lips. What's this verse warning us? And we've seen this in various forms all throughout the Proverbs so far in our teaching. So what's this verse telling us? What's the warning here? Be careful of gossips or gossiping. Depends on who you make the application to, of course, obviously. Most everybody. My wife is so cynical. Truthful, but cynical. All right, that's good. All right, look at the word meddleth. What does that mean? Kind of. Associate. That's the closer definition in the context here. It doesn't mean, you can add that in what you were saying, you can add it into a definition, but it's really this. Strong's kind of says this, not to have or do business with. Not to have business with them or to do business with them. If it's a known person that's going to tell secrets and tell private information, just don't have nothing to do with them. It is good advice. Never be sure with them, even if you have to. This is the last person on earth. I really don't want to use this person. I'm forced to. This is the situation I'm in. Don't trust them fully. You know, what is it we say? Trust but verify. Make sure what they're saying is in writing so that you got it. Make sure you take and get some collateral so that, hey, if you have to pin them on their words, you've got to get it in writing and make sure the writing equals what they're saying. Yes, sir. If they talk about others, they'll talk about you. And of course, the other part of this too would be the Strong says, don't even engage them for anything if you can get it to that point. Just what Greg said if someone talks about others, do you think they might do the same about you? Now let me say this. This is not regarding small talk, like, did you hear brother so-and-so was sick? That's not the type of talking that we're thinking about here. I mean, there are times it is appropriate to share, maybe not all the details. You know, one of the things that I learned very quickly was when someone has a prayer request, don't immediately put it on Facebook. If you've ever had me talk to you, I often will say, now, how much of this do you want me to share? If you don't want me to share, I won't. And a lot of times I'll get a phone call. Did you know that so-and-so is sick? Yes. How come you didn't put it out online? They asked me not to. Oh. Goodbye. And that's the truth. What we're talking about here is, hey, did you hear the brother so-and-so? He lost $1,000 on a bet during the football season. Who needs to know that? You just trying to make yourself look good because you only lost 200? I don't know, whatever, right? What's the warning in he that flattereth with his lips? We're not to meddle, not with him that flattereth. What does it mean to flattereth with the lips? Ooh, butters you up and stabs you in the back. I like that. The word flattereth carries this meaning: with intent to deceive. I mean, they're speaking with the intent to deceive you. I'm going to tell you a bold-faced lie, and you're going to have to deal with it. But I'll make it sound so convincible that probably you'll believe it. It means to deceive, delude. It means to allure somebody to something in a very sinister way. You know, that car that's on the back part of the lot, it's really a good car for you. Well, why don't you have it out front? Because I've been saving it for you. Well, they know that, you know, the thing's only got, you know, 3 wheels. The third one is a piece of cardboard. And you're not going to get out of the lot with it, right? We've all been there. The word flattereth means to exaggerate and to be able to persuade, what the Bible would refer to as a silly one. You know, Paul mentioned that. They'll lead silly ladies away with their false doctrines. A silly one is not somebody that doesn't have a mind or can't process. It's somebody that didn't choose to get the counsel they needed along the way too. I wrote this at the end: to exaggerate and persuade a silly one who fall for their baloney. Please don't eat a bologna sandwich without getting some advice from somebody. I like bologna too. All right, we're going to spend a little time in verse 20. Verse 20 says, whoso curseth his father or his mother, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness. Why would a child curse his parents? He has an entitled mentality. Yes. What else would cause a child to curse his parents? It goes along with what she said, because, go ahead. Lack of discipline, sure. It's the me. Say it again, Greg. Self-centered. Okay. What do you think the word curseth means? Oh, yeah. Look at the whoso curseth his father or his mother. In context, kind of What else? What else would we think that might mean? Cussing a parent. Okay. What else? Disowning publicly. Okay. There are a lot of things. Let me just give you some of the words that were used to define the word curseth. These words: ridicule, mocking, disparaging, and to scoff at. Let me pull those apart for you. The word ridicule, what does that mean? Somebody help me out here. What does ridicule mean? To make fun of. Means to deride. That means constantly putting them down. Jokingly, my sister would take my dad out somewhere, and she'd get turned around in the store, and she'd look at him, and she said, "You know they told me to bring you back by 7, and if you're not good, I'll take you back early." And that was my dad's way of looking at her, and they laughed about it and had fun. But what if that was for real? We've all seen it out in public where somebody gets upset. When Becky and I attended and were members of Grace Baptist Church, a lot of times I drove, but we finally got old enough to go with what was called the Young at Hearts. We were finally in the senior citizens category, which meant we get to go out to eat every month. And there was a handicapped young man by the name of David. David was a very sweet guy. Parents raised him till they died. Brother tried to help him out, put him in one of these homes that helps. And David had very little motor skills. And we would take him out to eat, and he was sloppy. Food went everywhere. And so I told the guy that ran the program, his name was Earl, I said, "Earl, let me take care of David." And so Becky and I would sit at a different end of the table, and we'd have David near us, and David would make a mess. We would clean up the mess. David would need to go to the restroom. David didn't have enough motor skills to pull his own zipper down. And he would always apologize. "I'm so sorry, Bob. I'm so sorry." I said, "David, someday somebody will have to help me." There were people, even in the restaurant, you could hear them. They were ridiculing him. Why would they bring him out in public? How disgusting that is. He can't even hit his mouth. They didn't know David like I knew David. David walked in here tonight, I'd take him out to eat. I'd let y'all go with us and see. Between me and him, we could snow out a whole restaurant. Amen. By the way, the word ridicule equals words and actions. You can ridicule a person by your actions as well as your words. By the way, all of this has words and actions. The word mocking, what does that mean? And not just mocking and parroting what they say. What does the word mocking mean? I do too. And that's what we're being warned of. The word mocking means to treat with scorn. Disdain, right? Mocking also, you can deceive or use deceiving phrases to make that person maybe obey. Again, words and actions. Then the word disparage. The word disparage means that we have lowered our estimation of. I mean, in all reality, probably I'm probably preaching more to the choir here than I'll ever know. Even my son's mother-in-law lost her dad, and her dad was not a very nice man. But even through all of the things that he had done wrong, she had good words because she chose to pick the good things. Believe me, it wasn't good. I mean, what I mean is I know what went on. It wasn't that good. That's right. But you understand, we're talking about a child that's being nasty to the parents. And so disparage means I've lowered my estimation of them. My dad was my hero. Perhaps you remember Dr. Jeff Amsball when he came here to preach. Dr. Amsball's dad was a drunk before he got saved. literally every time he got paid, he worked in a steel mill, he would get paid and come home and hand his wife $20 to make for the rest of the time till the next payday, because he lost it all at the bar. But he got saved. And when he got saved, he got really saved. Jeff Amsbaugh asked his dad to be his best man in his wedding. And somebody said, well, why did you ask your dad? He said, because he was the best man. Do you understand his estimation of his dad rose, not went down? Kind of interesting. The word scoff means, which is part of cursive, it means an expression of derision, a mockery or scorn or contempt. It means to show ridicule, to show mockery, to utter a derisive language. Again, words and actions. So we've got this son that curses his father and mother. Then you see that phrase, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness. What's that mean? It either goes away or it becomes so dim it can't be seen. I could argue both cases. Yes, obscure darkness is pitch black, can't see. Nothing really helps. What else? What's the implication, though? This is a punishment that's being thrown out there. All right, let me give you two more verses real quick. Go ahead. Okay. Turn to Exodus chapter 21 real quick. We'll make it easy. Yes, Proverbs is just echoing a lot of the Old Testament. And we say, well, preacher, if all we see in is Old Testament, we're New Testament Christians. Hang on, we'll get in Matthew in just a moment, okay? Exodus chapter 21. Look at verse 17. Now, if this ain't to the point, nothing else will. And he that curseth his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. They were serious about it. You know, nowadays we just ignore it. We think it, well, and a lot of it has to do with upbringing. A lot of it has to do, and listen, we got enough families represented here. We all raised our children a little differently than one from another. But isn't it nice, and your hope is just around the corner, believe it or not, as your kids become adults and they do what's right? Isn't that refreshing? And they still call and they still ask advice. And I mean, these are great things. Nothing wrong with that. Now go over to Matthew chapter 15 and we'll see that it's still a New Testament principle. I can't explain all the verse. I wish I could. I should have got a little more information. But notice what Matthew 15 verse 4 says. For God commanded. Okay, this is the command. This still is applicable to the New Testament era, even though probably this is the principles coming out of the Old Testament, and it is. Honor thy father and mother. Well, we're told that numerous times in the New Testament, right? You're to honor your mother, and then you get long life, right? All right. And he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. All right, suppose for a moment that the child that disparages and curses his parents, let's say by chance he is saved, but maybe he's never grown. It might not be a death here that's instantaneous by rocks being chucked on him. Let me ask another question and then you'll understand this. How many of your parents ever looked at you and said, I hope you have a child just like you? Go ahead, raise your hand. Your mom or dad said that to you. Oh, were they not right? I mean, it's come back to roost, ain't it? And sometimes that's the worst death of all. The other worst death is when you hear your parents mistakes coming out of your own mouth. There's certain deaths that don't, listen, there's sometimes death as a release, isn't it? When there's such bad suffering or there's such loss of capabilities, sometimes death is a release. This death that they're talking about here in Matthew is that long, extended, painful. Popular song says, I have regrets, I have a few. There's not anybody that doesn't have some regrets. But you have to get past the regrets and look at the good things too. Thankfully, I pray that we don't have children that are cursing us. Because it kills us, but the death they'll suffer is going to come in increments that's worse than we'll ever know. Yes. If ours would have tried, they probably, just go ahead and take me out, Dad. My dad used to say, I can take you out. And he'd say, and there's not a court in the land that would convict me. And I believed him. Thought, well, I'm getting ready to die here any moment. And nobody would care because of my dad, and he won't even go to jail over killing me. Probably had every right to. The Proverbs are so interesting to think about. So what's the answer? How do you keep a child from cursing you as a parent? Okay, yes, sure. I can take. I brought you. That's what he said. I brought you into the world. And I can take you out, and there's not a court in the land. Yes, that's part of it. What else? It's the same principle, the fear of God. But what else does that mean? Sure, a reverence. This is what God says. This is how we need to live. Look, I'm not perfect. As a dad, I'm not perfect. My wife's not perfect as a mother. We're trying to do it by the Bible. I apologize for the mistakes I made, but this is unacceptable. I hate going into Walmart, and there's some child that is screaming their lungs out because mama wouldn't give them a piece of bubble gum. I kept saying things like, I could help that child. And Becky would say, just keep walking. And my kids now go through Walmart saying, Dad, I believe we could help that child. Because they know. I understand the pressures of life. You can't always put that fear of God in them, but you can put the other fear. My dear pastor that I considered my father in the ministry, Tom McGath, he was a very unique man, did some wild, crazy, crazy stuff. And one day I asked his son, who's now a pastor, Eddie, you're in Christian high school, is there drugs there? And he said, yes. I said, you ever do any? No. I said, come on, Ed. It's just you and me, bub. He said, no, and I'll tell you why. He looked at me and he said, I've seen my dad get hurt so many times that I have decided that I don't want to be the next one to hurt my dad. Now that's a reverent fear, isn't it? I thought immediately, because the Holy Spirit convicted me, I've seen God hurt so many times, I really don't want to be the next one to hurt. That's it for tonight. Prayer request real quick. Pray for Stephen Beverly. It looks like pneumonia is starting to set in. This is not good. It seems like they make one step forward and three back. Pray for Brother Marvin Mills, Pastor Mills. He's still struggling in a lot of areas. They've told both of these men they're not coming home. One's in the hospital. Mom. Okay, one of them was in the one of them they took to the hospital. I don't know if they kept him or not. And that is very low. Pray for the Mills. Pray for Joel trying to get a vehicle running again. He called me tonight. Go ahead. Yeah. I have an update on somebody that's already on the question. Yes. Her name's Amber. She's living with my sister need to pray earnestly. What was her name again? Pray for Amber. Amber really needs the Lord to intervene. Just crazy stuff for COVID, and I'm sure we're going to hear a million of these. One of my pastors, the pastor that ordained me, in fact, they live in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. His wife's got COVID. She got to where she couldn't breathe. They called the ambulance, and the ambulance said, you're in day such and such. You're going to have 2 more bad days. Here's what you do. We're not taking you to the hospital. Now, they didn't refuse. What they said was, you'll start seeing a change. We don't know what's happening at this point. Oh, yes. Brother Wynn's wife's mother got COVID. She's like 89. She passed today. Do pray for Brother Wynn's wife. Thank you. Wife's family on the loss of Miss Wynn's mother. And Marty's wife's not in the greatest of health either. So do pray for her. Her name is Kathy Wynn. Kathy would be the daughter. I believe she's the oldest daughter, if I remember right, too. So do pray for the Wynns. Yes, Tom? Are they allowing you to go in and, are you allowed to go on appointments? Okay, so you got to have the appointment. Okay, so it's not outside yet. Things are getting rough. I know Libby told me some things today, some of the nurses in town. Our governor's already talking about masks at school. Hasn't made that decision yet, but there's a lot of things going on. This second wave looks like it's about as bad as the first wave. You know, we've got Awana starting next week. We're still going to press ahead, but if things change, we'll have to make decisions on the fly. And we hate to do that, but it's kind of like, okay, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Pretty much was told by Brother John Camp, don't count on being in the schools at least this semester. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. A lot going on, just a lot going on. Please do what you think is right by your own health. That's all I can tell you to do. If we make decisions here at church, it'll be through leadership. We have no plans at this point until we are forced into making a decision. Our decision has always been to make sure that we provide the healthiest environment that we possibly can without having to make, you're an adult, you have to make your own decisions and stuff like that. And please let me remind you, even during this time of things getting a little hotter, if you've got a problem health-wise or you're concerned about health, please call me. Or call the church, because if Andrea don't pick up the phone, it's going to roll to my phone anyways. Just let us know. This is how you have to be a minister these days. You can't go visit as much, so you got to at least know the circumstances, and it sure would help us, and then we can let the church know without doing public stuff too. So just do pray that we'll have wisdom when it comes to things like this, and pray that we don't have to make hard decisions about this, but we'll see what happens. Anything else? Wow. If you've got the one call, remember also not only this aunt, but do pray for Anita's nephew. He's on a vent, basically, is what it amounts to. And she said, I think she told me he's like 46 or something. I can't remember his name offhand. I have it. Philip, thank you. And Buchanan, Philip Buchanan, and stuff. Does anybody know him by chance? What would you say, he's in mid-40s? Yeah. I think so. I think that's what she was saying too. Whoosh, pray for Haiti. Still a lot going on there. And Joel did say the other night, though, at least their people are semi-safe at this point. So that's good. Wow. Big day, huh? Steve, would you pray for us, sir?